Hey Deepak, how are you? Hello. Quickly waiting for a couple of people to join in and then we'll get started. I'll just spin that also. So today's session is about how we started our journey. We'll quickly get started. Essentially, today's session is going to be about how the brand started. There have been times when a lot of people have sent in their questions via DM. They've commented, they've asked us like how the brand actually began and how the entire concept of minimal wastage and everything came about. So the journey today is going to be, basically today's conversation is going to be about the journey that we've had, how we started, why we are where we are, and a lot of addressing a lot of other questions that have been sent to us in the past. So let's quickly get started, and I'll share the video as a story or as an IGTV so that others can look through it in case they missed. So first and foremost, how did we start and when did we start? So we started. So essentially, before Savaya, I had another startup with a friend from college, which was called Pink Orange. That was one of my very first startups. It was again a clothing label itself, and the idea behind that startup was essentially to create fusion wear outfits. Back then, when we started, we never realized that all the outfits that we were creating, we were actually making them out of waste. We had a lot of fabric waste at that point of time in our manufacturing unit, and that was something that we could leverage through our master whom we had, and he helped us sort of dig deep into the kind of different types of beautifully wasted fabrics that are there in this industry, and he helped us collect all of them, and we would just sit down and design pieces out of that. And we didn't know that something that we were doing was so sustainable and something which is going to trend a couple of years later. So that's how I sort of ventured into the field of creating products, or say apparel specifically for women. The next step was essentially after taking over for almost a year in Pink Orange, I realized that I wanted to gain a bit more skill set, and I wanted to venture out in the industry and see how the industry actually functions. And I did not want it to be specific to what do you say only clothing. I wanted to sort of explore how versatile the entire industry is. So I took up a job somewhere else. I worked there for a while in marketing, and I figured my strengths, my weaknesses, areas I was potentially good at, areas where I needed improvement. And after I had worked there for a while, I realized it's about time to get something started on my own, and that's when Savaya happened. So the first year of Savaya was very similar to the first year of Pink Orange, where we were creating outfits out of waste, and we were also curating outfits. But mostly the sales were happening only through what do you say offline channels, only through exhibitions. After the first year, I got myself registered, and we started creating collections where we finally sort of went online and started selling through a lot of other marketplaces. So this has been what Savaya has been about. Uh, Precisely, we haven't been very old. I mean, in the industry, we are almost 1.5, 2 years old, not more than that. There have been a few hiccups in our journey, and that's sort of there in almost everyone's journey. So nothing new, nothing different, but everyone goes through that, and that's how you decide that you want to stick to it. So that's about like the first couple of years. Now, why we do what we do. So after I started Savaya, I started reading a lot about this industry, how this entire industry works, how the entire industry sort of wastes a lot of fabrics, what sustainability is as a trend, what minimal wastage means, what ethical wages are, what fair trade is. And when I started reading and digging deep about it, I realized that I cannot have a brand which is not ethical, or a brand which produces a lot of waste, or a brand that's actually doing more good, doing more harm than doing good. So that's when we started sort of changing the course of how the entire brand was going to be streamlined, and we figured there were things that were needed. For example, I made sure that all the patterns that we were creating we ensured that all the patterns that were created did not waste fabric at all. I mean, minimal से भी minimum जो कर सकते हो उतना wastage हमने कोशिश किया. Then we started adding fabrics and patterns, and a lot of our supply chain started comprising of Indian weaves. So we have a lot of ikats, we have a lot of striped cottons which are hand woven, and we have a lot of cotton club which is again hand woven. So we have a lot of these kind of fabrics which have a personalized touch of Indian artisans and Indian textiles, which again was a dying craft unless and until a lot of international brands started focusing upon, for example, block printing, which sort of has become very popular in the past, and in fact now H&M has collaborated with Sabyasachi to create their own collection around this. So yeah, so that's about our journey. Now let's quickly get down to the questions that you guys specifically had. First question is, how do you find your audience? How do you figure out whom to target? So this was asked by Dipali. No, Chahita. So this was asked by Chahita. Now, how you figure out your audience is, first you have to figure out the skill set that you have. What are your, what's the kind of fabric that you're more comfortable in? What's your personal style? What are the kind of designs that you're creating? Once you identify what you want to create, you start figuring out whom you're sort of creating for. There could be times when you're interested only in making kids wear. So if you're interested in making kids wear, then your target audience completely changes. So you need to figure out what your personal style is, and once you have sort of walked that journey, once you've identified what your personal style is, that's when you take the next leap and you figure out whom to target. Then the next question is, how can boutiques go digital? I think a lot of boutiques might be wondering specifically during these times in terms of how should they go digital and what should they do about it. I would say something very simple. There are a lot of people who were not even experiencing something as major as coronavirus, but still they were online, still their boutiques were online. And if in case you want to go online, if in case you want to start selling online, the first and foremost thing is start clicking pictures of what you create and start posting it. You need to just become regular and consistent at sharing what you're creating, and there will be people out there who resonate with it and they would reach out to you. And of course, once you get a hang of it, once you sort of start doing it properly, there are so many things that you will get to learn all along your journey basis the experiences and challenges that you face. So digital के लिए the first and foremost platform that you should be looking at is definitely Instagram. There are a couple of brands which are doing it really well, and I'll give you an example of a boutique based model which is now sort of a brand which has been started by a girl when she was probably 23, 24. It's called Label Lakhina Couture, and she started from her home. She has karigars sitting at her home making pieces, she designs, she wears those outfits, she clicks pictures and she posts her pictures online. And now she has actually transformed her own designs into orders that people place for her, including the fabric that she gets to choose. And Facebook groups are also there through which you can market yourself and reach out to audience which is not just limited to India but outside the country also. Then there's a question, how do you start without money? So I think this is one of the biggest apprehensions that a lot of people have. How do you start if you don't have money? I think all that you need to start is figure out a way to get orders. Get orders, show your skill set to a couple of people who can potentially place an order with you, and if you get that order, reach out to karigars which are sitting in markets, or tailors if you can tie up with somebody, or if you think that you can only craft that piece perfect, go ahead and do that. Just create that one piece, give it to that customer. If she is happy, you will get your feedback, you will figure out how your skill set is, you will get the payment for that specific piece. You really have not invested anything anywhere. The master has his own machine and karigars and everybody. All he has to do is cut. He will charge you a certain fee, you charge a certain fee to the customer. This probably is, obviously there's a commission that you charge to the customer that is your own commission, but you're not investing anything anywhere, which gives you the leverage of what do you say, the leverage of not investing whatever you're earning right away. Once you see that you're getting more number of orders, then you can definitely invest into a machine, set it up probably at the place where you live, call your master on and off when the order is there, and once you sort of get into the flow of it, you can begin setting up a proper unit. But meanwhile, when there's nothing that you have, figure out a way to get orders and find a person who's going to create it for you, and that's it. That's all you need. Okay. The next question is online booming? Is it a good idea to start online? I think it's a very I wouldn't say a difficult question to answer, but a very tricky one. Is online booming? Yes, definitely online is booming. Is it a good idea to start online? It depends on what exactly is your business model. If your business model is on the lines of creating a lot of pieces and selling online, then that means you need a lot of investment. If your business model is about creating pieces which are individualistic or exclusive and limited in quantity, then also it's not a bad idea to go online in that scenario as well, provided you find customers who are going to help you exhaust the fabric within that time frame. So you have to figure out the business model first and then pick the channel. Is online something that you're looking at, or is offline something that you're looking at? So it's a call that you take basis the kind of business model you plan for yourself. How do you attract traffic or footfall to your store without money? If you're talking about offline, the best way to attract traffic to your store is word of mouth. I mean, create pieces which are extremely well-fitting, which are pieces which are sort of, that resonate with the audience which is walking into your store. And if they connect with it, they are definitely going to walk out and talk about you, and they're going to bring back a lot of people. On the contrary, if you're looking at online traffic on your website, then the best way to go about it is social media and SEO. I mean, a lot of people underestimate the value of SEO, and I would say even I have underestimated the value of SEO despite the fact that I come from that background. But SEO is definitely something that you should totally be looking at. The next thing is, what skills do I need to grow my brand? So it depends on the kind of background you've had, it depends on your strengths precisely. I mean, if you think that you're good at creating something, then you should focus on that. I mean, I wouldn't specifically enlist like 10,000 things that you need to know or you need to learn before you get into it. But I would definitely say capitalize on your strength and work on your weaknesses. That's the best way to grow your brand. There's nothing else that can help you out. I have a sarees business. How do I grow it? It depends on the kind of sarees you have. The best way in the given scenario with limited budgets would be to do a shoot of those sarees, post them on Instagram, use the right hashtags, and reach out to as many people as you can. Another platform that you can possibly leverage is Pinterest. Pinterest is a platform which is frequented by a lot of women. You have no idea the amount of women who are going online on Pinterest and looking for data. So definitely Pinterest is one of the channels that you should consider looking at, and WhatsApp. You can also start circulating your images that you are creating to your customer base through WhatsApp. So these three channels will definitely add up in setting up the base of your brand at least. Then why are your pieces so expensive? So essentially, I want you to understand that we don't design with the philosophy of just creating a lot of pieces. Our philosophy does not come from a background where we want to sell something at 999 because our competitors are doing it like that. But essentially every single thing that we have in our store, to our online channels, to whatever we create and whatever we make offline as well, is something that is very well thought through. Like, we figure out what we are creating, why we are creating it, how we are planning to go about it, the kind of fabrics that we are using, in fact the kind of threads that we are using. Sometimes after reading a lot about polyester based threads, we've even changed the way we've even changed a lot of supply based things that we have in the trims and accessories space, which sort of create a lot of pollution. So we've become very particular about what we add to creating our outfits, including the threads, the kind of time that it takes to create one piece. I can't be pushing my cardigans to create 1,000 pieces just because I feel that's going to help me become profitable. That does not mean that I don't want him to work hard. but that does not mean that I'm going to sort of squeeze him through the day and pay him less. So we are a very mindful, ethical, fair wage firm. We are very small, but we ensure that our laborers and our team does not go through anything which could put them through a lot of trouble. Something as simple as when we were like I was looking for a space to start the work when I moved my base to Gurgaon. I made sure that the base had AC because I know that it gets extremely hot and humid during summers, and I don't want my team to feel bogged down in this weather and be obligated to work just because there are 10 people placing orders. And I know for a fact that there are thousands of people who are not willing to sort of pay for that convenience. But that's fine. I mean, if you're not willing to be a part of it, you're not willing to be a part of somebody's comfort, that's your call, that's not my call. But at least I have the right to sort of help the team and make sure that they are within that comfort zone, because we thrive on those bases. Okay, so let's go to the next question. How do you manage your tailors? They are so annoying. I can totally understand. I mean, working with karigars and tailors is definitely not an easy task, and this is one of the things which I think everyone who's sort of thinking of starting up needs to consider before they get into this whole zone of opening a brand or a boutique, or not just clothing. I mean, if you get into anything which involves a lot of artisanal or a karigar based work, then you definitely need to sort of know how to manage people. Sometimes you learn while you're at it, and sometimes it comes to you naturally, but a lot of it comes through experience. So I would highly recommend that if you want to sort of manage tailors and everything, work with them, work with different kinds of tailors, and work with as many tailors as you can before you finally settle down on having a permanent person in your team. And another thing that you could ensure, which at least has worked for me, I don't know if it's working for everyone else, maybe it's wise to not hire friends. Maybe it's wise to not hire tailors who know each other very well. Maybe it makes a lot of sense to go for a tailor who comes with a different skill set and a different background, and your karigar or your master could come with a different background and a different skill set and a different mindset also. It changes the way your outfits are made, it changes the way they perceive your instructions, and it also ensures that there is more productive work happening compared to a lot of complications that they could bring out by sort of teaming together against you also sometimes. So you have to sort of find that fine balance by finding the right person you work with. How do you keep your inventory in check? I think another very important question. This is something that even we guys are figuring out till now. But one of the ways is we tried using one of these apps. I'm forgetting the name. Everybody uses it. I'll get back to you on the name. But we tried using one of those apps, which is extremely recommended for inventory management. But it wasn't very comfortable for us. And then there is another. Then we use Excel right now to manage our inventory. But inventory management is definitely one of the toughest tasks. I think one thing that has helped me though is ensuring that the inventory is updated in our accounts. So when it's sort of there in the accounts, the chances of us missing out on what we have and the number of pieces we have sort of goes down. So it helps when you update it in your accounting software, but this is something that even we are still figuring out at our stage. Then why don't you sell through Myntra and Ajio? Well, that's a very important aspect. I mean, online brands which are planning to sort of sell through Myntra and Ajio or are selling through Myntra and Ajio have a lot of big numbers that they are dealing with. And then there are obviously price and all of those challenges which follow. First up, we don't want to be a brand which is associated with creating low quality products and products which are produced in bulk quantities. And one of the key reasons for that is essentially that anything and everything that we are producing is actually going to sort of contribute to the bigger pollution, or the percentage of the pollution that's being created by the industry if it's in humongous quantities. And then the math does not add up. I'll just give you a very small example. If a fabric costs 100 rupees a meter, and an average fabric that goes in creating a garment is say 3 meters, so essentially 300 meters of fabric, 300 rupees of fabric is what I need for that one product, plus the manufacturing cost that we would have at our scale, which could probably be 300 approximately, depending on the kind of design that we are creating and the number of pieces that we are creating. So that adds to 600 rupees per unit. Now remember, this is exclusive of taxes, packaging, labels and all of that. So if 600 is the landing cost of one unit, Myntra or Ajio or bigger channels want us to at least provide them with 50 designs and 30 pieces in almost each design, which amounts to almost 1500 pieces in terms of inventory. 30 pieces in each designs because you take it size wise. So like I have a size set of small, medium, large, XL, double XL, so 5 sizes. So 5 into what do you say, 50. So yeah, so the amount of pieces that they are asking me to produce and the amount of quantity that I am going to create and the amount of money that I'm going to invest is going to come back to me 3 to 4 months down the line. That too, there's no guarantee that it would come at the base price, or it will come at probably a discounted price. So it's a huge investment overall. If that's the amount of investment that I'm planning to make in a channel like Myntra and Ajio, at the cost of compromising on the base at which the brand thrives, it does not just add up logically. So that's one of the reasons why Myntra and Ajio is something that we've always evaluated, but we've never sort of decided to go ahead with them. We are still discovering if they are one of the channels we would want to continue with, but definitely not at the number of pieces and quantities that they're looking at. Then how much experience does one need to start out? I think that's also a very tricky question. I know people who have started up when they were in school and colleges and they are doing phenomenally well, because when they started up they always had somebody or the other to mentor them and tell them that this is exactly what they need to do, or these are the processes through which you'll grow and you'll thrive, and these are the mistakes that you were making, so on and so forth. But if you were doing it all alone, if you were doing it all by yourself, then I would highly recommend to not go into the startup world unless and until you have some experience of working with at least a couple of people. By working in a team, by working with a lot of people, you get to know your strengths, your weaknesses, your improvement areas. You get to know where you might need help when you actually get down to the work. And startup essentially does not mean कि तुम boss बन के बैठ गए हो. Startup में you have a lot of challenges. You have to go through anything and everything, from scraping or packing your own pieces to sometimes even sitting with the tailor and getting things done. Sometimes even, getting the chai if you need to, for people who are in your studio and all of that. So startup is not something which is an easy ball game. It's something which comes with its own set of challenges, and while it's something that you should do if you're passionate about it, I would highly recommend that it's mentally taxing also. I mean, if you don't want to sort of compromise on the way you have like certain patterns set in your life, that you have certain priorities set in your life, then you should evaluate getting into your startup zone very wisely, and probably not without a budget on your mind and a time frame. So you should know that this is the amount that I'm planning to invest for X number of months, and if I don't get the return on investment by this time, or that return on investment could also be numbers that you're seeking in terms of traction, not just in terms of sale. So if you're getting all of that, then you're good to go. Like, you don't have to necessarily rely on sticking with the startup otherwise. Okay, is it important to have a GST registration for online brands? Yes, it is extremely important. If you're planning to sell through marketplaces, then it's extremely important. But if you're planning to sell through Instagram or Facebook or any other such social media platform directly to the consumer, where you're not using services like delivery or any other courier partner, then you can skip going for GST for as long as you're earning only 20 lakhs, something under 20 lakhs as per the current terms and conditions of the government. So if you're under 20 lakhs, you can skip your GST registration for as long as you're not partnering with any B2B service. You're directly reaching out to the customer and shipping probably through Speed Post or something. Do you ship abroad? Yes, we do ship abroad, but right now we're not shipping outside the country because of obvious reasons. Okay, what is the job scene in the fashion industry and how do you gain experience? Okay, so the job scene in the fashion industry has never been very pleasant. I mean, there are times when you go through XYZ sort of pay packages, which sometimes are not very pleasing, and then not just pay packages, I think the industry in itself exploits all kinds of people, educated or otherwise. I would recommend, if you want to sort of gain some knowledge, then it's extremely crucial that you work anywhere and everywhere, irrespective of the pay that you're getting. While this might sound like, why should I work anywhere if I'm not getting the right amount of pay? But sometimes you need to gain knowledge, and sometimes you need to gain that experience and become an expert in something to be able to demand what you want. A lot of times, and I have personally seen this myself because I've taken a lot of interviews and I've met so many of starters, freshers out there. You walk into the store thinking, or you walk into the company thinking that you have a lot of experience and expertise, but trust me, you don't. If you need that experience or expertise, you need to step out. You need to get into the zone, learn what's happening, sit with the karigar, know how to manage him, sit with the designer, figure out how it's done. You have to do that, because if you don't go through that ordeal of torture or that ordeal of learning with the karigar, or if you don't go through that process of understanding why certain things are done in a certain way, how to sort of fix errors, then there's no point that you walk into a XYZ brand and demand a certain amount. I mean, the best way is to become an expert and then demand something which is extremely justified. But if you think that you don't have that experience with you, if you don't have that knowledge with you, then there's no harm in fact learning it from free, because trust me, I mean, if you step out of your regular zone, that's when if you step out of your comfort zone, that's when you actually explore and figure out what your expertise could probably be in. Like, somebody might actually say that they are very fond of designing, but when you start designing practically for a brand, would you realize that maybe the kind of skill set that I have, or the kind of design aesthetic that I have, is not in sync with the brand that I'm working for. So all those things are things which you sort of need to discover before you actually get to a position of figuring out the kind of experience you need, the kind of job you need, and the kind of area you want to settle in. Cool. So these were the questions that you had, and I think I've addressed all of them. There was another one that I've probably... There's another question which was more on the lines of, what is the future of fashion? So I think fashion is it's an ever evolving industry, and there is no future challenges or changes that are going to happen on a major scale, but definitely sustainability is going to come back into the picture. A lot of people are going to be very mindful of what they buy, how they buy, where they buy it from, and you should be, ideally you should know why you're buying certain things, from where you're buying it, who's making it for you, how does it make a lot of difference to you. So as such, if you want to know the industrial change, the trend change that's going to happen, probably there would be less number of people looking out for non-essential products right now, but this number might go up in the next couple of months once the situation gets better and everyone starts stepping out of the house. They would be more mindful of what they want to buy and the kind of products they pick for themselves. Fabrics, from all the polyester based fabrics, people might start moving towards something which is more Indian textile oriented, or something which is on the lines of say cottons and hand wovens, something which is on the lines of even milk fiber, corn fiber. So all the natural sustainable fabrics also might come back into the picture, and I think it's about time that they do. It's about time that you also start sort of valuing what you're wearing, because it matters. And maybe over the next couple of years, once this trend sort of percolates into the mass also, everyone will get to know what it essentially means to buy from a sustainable brand, or an ethical brand, or a fair wage brand. Yeah, that's about it. So these were the questions. If there's anything else, you can always DM it to us. We'll try addressing it in one of the next sessions that we might have Obviously, once a couple of questions sort of get together, then only would we want to address them. But yeah, that's about it. So let me know if there's anything else that you would like to know. Also, before ending this, I would want you to know that we have a very interesting session coming up in the next week, and from next week onwards essentially, where we're going to bring a lot more different brands, and we are going to be talking about their journey, how they started their journey, how they evolved into a brand which is essentially doing extremely well now, how they employ the local artisans and craftsmen. These are going to be startups which started 3 years back, 5 years back, 7 years back, and how well they're doing in the industry right now, from creating something as unique as dream catchers to interior decor products to clutches and handbags which are hand embroidered. So don't forget to tune in next week, and we'll be announcing our Insta Live details soon. Thank you. Bye bye. Stay safe. Take care.